Hi, welcome and good afternoon to NatWest TIE and Live Interview. My name's Dale Sybottom. I'm one of the NatWest Regional Directors for the bank's entrepreneurship team. It's my privilege and delight to open today's session, which is the first of a series of 7 sessions, so 7 live interviews, which will be broadcast over the next 7 weeks. So here at NatWest, we are really passionate about our entrepreneurship team, strategy, helping business owners and entrepreneurs around the country. Shortly, I'm going to be handing over to your host for the afternoon, Vikas Shah, who's going to be giving you an insightful Q&A session with a guest of high caliber. And we're going to see that over the next 7 weeks through these sessions. As I said, this is the first of a series of 7 sessions. Just before I hand over to Vikas, I just want to say, first of all, I'm fully appreciative that these are unprecedented times. And trust me, at NatWest, we're working tirelessly hard to support business owners and entrepreneurs throughout the UK at these very difficult times. Over the last 4.5 years, we've been working on our entrepreneurship strategy, which is crucial and fundamental to the lifeblood of the UK economy. We need more entrepreneurs, more business owners to be real thriving, not just in these difficult times, but as we come out of them. We're really proud to run a series of programs of support right from that early stage idea start for business owners, right through to those businesses that are scaling and really going through that high growth period. Me and my team work hard throughout the UK, helping and support them through a variety of initiatives, supporting programs and supporting lots of community of business owners and support for entrepreneurs. What we'd like to do and what we're proud of doing is really producing content that can help and support. And this is only just one of the areas where we know that we can help, getting insight from business owners, entrepreneurs that have been on the journey, that have been successful, that have had that roller coaster, that have really helped and supported. So it's a real pleasure and delight that I'm now going to host over to Vikas, who's going to now take into the Q&A session.
Great, thank you. And first of all, just a massive thank you to everyone for joining us online today. We're joined today by Steve Byrne, who's the CEO of Travel Counsellors, an incredible business. They were founded about 25 years ago, and today they have over 1,900 travel counsellors globally, 97,000 itineraries booked every year for over 450,000 customers. This is a seriously fast-growing business as well. So in January of this year, in 2019, the company celebrated its single biggest sales day in history with over £5.1 million in sales that day alone. So global sales that year for them were about 82 million. So Feb 2020, the company was ranked 89th on the UK's 100 best companies to work for by the Sunday Times. 97% of their franchisees say they absolutely love being part of the business, and 96% say that their customers would recommend them to family and friends. And for any business, those kind of metrics are seriously high. In April of this year as well, Travel Counsellors established a fund to financially assist their agents who've been affected by this COVID-19 pandemic. And in the same month, they won the Queen's Award for Enterprise for the 3rd time in the company's history, and the 2nd time in the international trade category. So today we're joined by Steve, the Chief Executive, really inspiring business leader. We're going to learn a bit more about how they, as a travel business, have dealt with this massive global event. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Vikas. It's pleased to be with you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today. The starting point was, when did you start to notice that COVID was something that you should keep your eye on? Because, we hear about viruses emerging around the world time and again, but when did you realize that this wasn't just one of those?
I think you were probably aware of it from a personal point of view, weren't you? We saw the first news in January, but probably in February it started to pick up, and it was becoming more prominent, and that's when we started to see some business impact. And then the pace of that, I think, for everyone accelerated into March. I think it's fair to say that I've been involved in two rounds of fundraising whilst at Travel Counsellors in 2014 and in 2018, so two separate private equity rounds of fundraising. And even going through those processes and all the extensive due diligence that you go through, I don't recall, though, ever anyone saying, how does the business react in the face of a global pandemic? It wasn't on most people's risk registers. So I think it was pretty clear that as it took its effect and sadly took its toll on lives and also businesses, we were dealing with something that for the vast majority of us had never experienced before, and therefore it needed a different type of response. Probably February was when we started becoming aware of it, and then March is when we started to take sort of more decisive action.
And how does that start for a business of your scale? Because I think the really interesting thing about Travel Counsellors is obviously you've got your kind of full-time in-house colleagues within the business, plus this network of 1,900 entrepreneurs who run their own businesses with you. So how do you even begin to strategically plan managing a group that size and that diverse through a crisis which has hit the travel industry extraordinarily hard?
I think it's fair to say that obviously the loss of life is the saddest, most regrettable.
Absolutely.
Thing. And then when it comes to businesses, I think everyone's been affected, but I think it's fair to say that travel has probably been one of the most impacted and probably will last the longest. So we went into this up until February. It doesn't seem like anymore, but in February we were on track to turn over about £750 million and make a good healthy profit and continue our long-term trend of double digit growth that we've had for the past 15 years or so. So I think what you do your best in this. I'm not saying what I'm about to say is we've been perfect at all, but I think there were three things that on reflection that we did. The first thing was just to take some time to think about what does this mean. I think it needed some time of calmness and some time of reflection because it was potentially so profound. And then once you've done that, you've got to think about who are the stakeholder groups that you need to manage and engage with as part of this process. And for most businesses, that will include your customers, your people, your supply chain network, your investors if you've got them, and then in our case we operate in a regulatory environment. So, and then finally your banks and other stakeholders. So you've got a group of people you need to try and manage, and then you've got to think about strategically what do we need to do. And we framed a strategy at the start of this, and it's moved on a little bit now, that focused on two things. Firstly, how can we make sure that not only do we get through this, but we come out of it in the best place possible. And by that, I'm not just talking about financially. I mean, it's obvious that financially you've got to get through it, and the main driver in that is cash. But how can we come out of it with our integrity intact? And when we first started to understood the profound impact of this, I did consciously think and appreciate. I didn't appreciate everything at the time, but I did appreciate that this virus is going to force many of us to do things that we may not otherwise have had to have done, but it shouldn't dictate how we behave and how we operate, and we shouldn't let it drive our values and how we want to operate the business and our lives too. So, notwithstanding the fact we've had to make some difficult decisions, let's try and stay true to our values, and then be clear about our strategy. And our strategy was about, one, how do we survive and make sure we stay true to our values? And then secondly, how can we make sure that we keep as much of the talent in the business as possible? And that includes, in our business, our self-employed travel entrepreneurs. They're one of the 5 million self-employed people in the country that are primary driver economic growth. So how can we protect them and come out with this with as many of those in as good a place as possible? So our strategy was very much focus on the people and then focus on the people.
And for those self-employed people in particular, especially given the uncertainty surrounding the travel industry, for you as the chief executive of the business, what was your approach in terms of communicating? Because one of the challenges I think for all of us as business owners has been, we want to say the right thing to our team, but also these are very uncertain times. So we ourselves don't know what's coming next week, never mind being able to communicate that with the wider team.
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, from a personal point of view, I changed my style a little bit. I'm a very imperfect CEO, by the way, as you can tell. But leading up to this, my style, I think, was to try and lead from the back and facilitate and build out a wider leadership team that can take the business forward. But you recognise that in a time of crisis, you've got to step to the fore and lead from the front. So I think that was the first thing. Second thing was then to make sure that we, as I'm sure people who are watching this have been doing themselves, is over communicate.
Yeah.
So the last thing you need in a time of potential negativity is to leave a vacuum, because the lowest common denominator will dominate the noise, and you can't afford that. You've got to motivate the motivator. So over communicate, and then do that in as open and as transparent and as honest way possible, which is we've tried to do. So our 1,900 travel counsellors work from home or shared offices, so we were used to using technology like this to communicate to them. And then the final thing is we built out a support hub, so a knowledge bank in effect, that gave them access to the latest government advice. We arranged some individual seminars, for example, with the CBI on what was happening in terms of government support. We put in a welfare fund. We put a big focus on training and development. So this is the time to sharpen your skills, so you're ready when the upturn when it comes. And then we tried to encourage what was already in place, which was mutual support within the travel counsellors community. So you've got people helping each other. And I said, when we were halfway through this, that in a time of crisis, you'll see the best and worst of human behaviours. You must let the best dominate the news, and true class will shine through. And both in the broader, in the country more broadly, and in each business, in each community of each business, you will have seen random acts of kindness where people have been helping each other through this, and that's been an important part of how we've got through it. The culture encourages that reciprocity and that caring and kindness, and our model is based on caring. It sounds a little bit corny and trite, but our travel counsellors provide an intimate level of caring service for their individual customers, and that's not about at this moment selling them travel, because you can't sell travel because there's nowhere to go to. But it does mean checking in, are you okay? I'm here for you, and I'm going to make sure that your existing booking that may need to be cancelled, that you've saved hard for and you were looking forward to, I'm going to make sure I do all I can to protect you and your family's interest. You can enjoy that holiday in the future. So the caring and kindness part of it is important too.
Great. And if we turn to the travel industry for a moment as well, I think there's nobody's naive enough to think that the world's going to go back to, in inverted commas, normal after this. I think we're going to see changes. We're going to see a different style of travel. But what are you seeing? And without kind of realming into the world of futurism, what do you think will be practically different about the way we travel moving forward?
Well, I think there's a short and a medium term. I mean, I'm not saying I'm right on this, but I'm pretty adamant, both from a personal point of view and a business point of view, this pandemic doesn't affect anything that's medium term or longer term. Yeah, I don't think it needs to do that. I see no reason why you should change your 5-year, 10-year aspirations for yourself or your family or your business, and I refuse to let that get into my thinking or our thinking. It does have a short-term impact, and listen, that short-term impact might be 2 to 3 years, so it's not a question of weeks and months. And I think in the short term, in the immediate short term, two things I think will dominate customers. Firstly, where is it safe to go to? Mm-hmm. And I need advice and support. So what's the travel journey going to be like, and what's going to be open when I get there? Because I want to make sure that myself and my family are going to be in a good place. So I think that's the first thing: travel safe. And then the second thing is just insightful advice on what is the right holiday for me, given where I'm at in my journey, my economic circumstances, what's happening in my life. And you want, I think, someone who can be dexterous and flexible in providing you with the right solution for you and your family, whether it's leisure or leisure or corporate. So I think they're the immediate short-term things. I think more medium-term that I think will last beyond this will be sustainability. I think people will be increasingly attuned to, I want to make sure that I want to experience the world, because travel is good for the soul, it's good for the world, it's good for society, it's good for relationships. So there's nothing permanent about this stop of travel. I think travel will continue, but how do I do that in the most sustainable way? So I think short term, where's safe and what's right for me, given the amount of uncertainty. More medium term sustainability, I think, will still be on people's mind. And then long term, I don't think you should change your long term aspirations for yourself or your business. Let's not let this do that to us.
Absolutely. And do you think that is going to have an impact on the kind of the infrastructure of travel as well? Because a lot of the partners that you will work with, whether it's airlines or hotels or accommodation providers, they rely on that volume of people coming through, and some of them are on very tight margins as well. Do you think it's going to have a knock-on impact on a lot of those businesses? We're already seeing a lot of airlines feeling this too.
Well, I think there are some sort of generic principles that in travel that apply across all sectors, and I think people who are watching this are experienced business people, and they'll know the one thing that this is hammered home to all businesses is what we probably all knew going into it: the cash is king.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you never, if you didn't know that before, you're never going to forget it now. And the responsibility to the next generation of leaders that we're mentoring, they understand that too. So I think that's one thing. And those businesses that are don't have that liquidity, I'm not going to get through it. So that's the same in travel or outside of travel. So those that are strong from a cash point of view will get through it. Not everyone will get through it. Second thing is those businesses that are nimble, that are asset light, they can adapt. They can adapt quickly. They can scale up and down their cost base quickly. They've got that flexibility in terms of what they do. They will do better, both within travel and outside of travel. Those are businesses that are tied into assets and asset utilization and the financing costs of assets. Those that with high fixed costs, not just staffing, but everything around staffing, premises and assets, are going to find it more difficult. So you need to be nimble, agile, and flexible, but more than anything, and it's a statement of the truth, isn't it? You've got to be completely attuned to your customers' needs, because none of us are anything without our customers, and without the quality of people who can look after our customers. And our model, and I'm repeating it, is based on caring. So what can we do during this to care for our customers, even though they can't buy from us, so that when they are ready to buy, they want to buy from us? And those businesses that are asset light, nimble, not all those good hard elements of their business, but have got that softness to them, their ability to care, to drive personalization, to build relationships, they're the ones that I think will come through it, both in travel and outside travel.
Yeah. And coming back to the business as well, I've always been really impressed at how fast you've grown. Whenever we bump into each other at events in Manchester and we go, how's it going, it's amazing the journey that your business has been on, even in those few weeks and months. But you've got private equity involvement, you're scaling fast. How does this strategically impact your stakeholders and funders? Because for any fast scaling business, an event like this is a major thing. And it can really impact your relationship with your stakeholders as well.
Well, I think a few things. Everyone's human, aren't they? So just because you work in, investment banking or private doesn't mean that you're human and not, attuned to what is going on in the world. I mean, this is no one's fault.
Yeah,
it's no one's fault. This. So I don't think any business leader should be beating themselves up if they're going through a tough time. You didn't create this. But it's a leadership challenge in terms of how you deal with it. So I think the basic rules apply with your investors as they do with the other stakeholder groups. That you change your communication frequency. So we've gone from monthly board meetings to weekly board meetings. You change your cadence of contact between board meetings from once a fortnight to once a week, or in some cases it's been daily. And then you have open and honest conversations. And I think you have to, along with the calmness and reflection at the start of this, you've got to demonstrate that you can also move quickly, because things change so quickly. So you can't spend, the past month, the next 2 months cogitating. You have to act. So, we acted very quickly in terms of how we can adjust our cost base to get through it. And I think investors will respond to that. And ultimately, your investors, as the CEO, you're responsible for people, culture, and strategy. So, what is your approach in terms of people, culture, and strategy in the context of this crisis, and building that alignment with your investors about what you are doing, and then building an alignment as things start to become clear about what does this mean for our financial planning and our cash management, and ultimately our shared returns. But that comes after you've thought through what does this mean for people's strategy and culture, so that we come out of this in the strongest position possible. Now, we're not a stellar growth company, so we didn't have exponential growth. We were really good. We had double-digit growth, an average of 15% every year for the past 15 years. Now, so 2 months ago, like many people watching this, we were on an upward growth curve, and you were never happy anyway, because you're always happily dissatisfied. But blimey, if only you could turn the clock back. We've had a massive smack in the face. But you can't let yourself, from a mindset point of view, personally, as the leader, because people are looking to us, you can't let yourself go into a rabbit hole of what could have been. It is what it is. There are moments when we've all had some, and I'm sure this has been the case with you. There's moments when, in your quieter moments, when you're with your family, you have gone to that dark place, and it's hugely emotional. But you've got to remind yourself that whether you're a small business owner, an entrepreneur like our travel counsellor, whether you're a colleague, a salary colleague, whether you're a CEO, ultimately we're all leaders. There's a saying, is that not every leader is a great person. We're all great people, are leaders, and everyone has got a set of responsibilities to their parents, to be the child that they wanted you to be. You might have dependent parents who are looking to you. You've got family who are looking to you. You've got customers. So we have to help ourselves be that leader that people want from us. And if you can't be that leader, then be honest and be in a culture where it's okay to share your sense of vulnerability, and encourage people to share that vulnerability. Don't hide it. And I know you're a big advocate of this, but you must have a culture where people can say, listen, I'm not in a good place and I need to talk about it, because everyone's going to go through this. It's a roller coaster, and then put things in place to support them. So we've always had in the business access to a personal counsellor that is available free of charge 24/7 if people need it. We've got 90 people who are trained as mental health first aiders. Whatever it is, whatever crutch you need to do this, you've got to be able to take advantage of it, because it isn't going to be rosy. But for the large part, let's be the role model people want from us, because people need us to be that.
Yeah. And do you think, and I totally agree, and I think actually for all of us as leaders, it's one of those things where no books or business school prepare you for how to handle a crisis like this. You have to really figure it out almost iteratively as you go along. But having that peer network around you of people that you can talk to and bounce ideas off is really important. One thing that's really fascinated me about your business is you've maintained, you've got all these travel counsellors, big distributed network of people. You've already used technology to enable them to work remotely and be part of the team. But what changes have kind of occurred within your business through this that you think actually are really positive and will perhaps stay with travel counsellors in the future?
Well, I think, a few things. I think people are more appreciative now of the softer skills, aren't they? Mm. So the acts of kindness and caring that people have shown, that including the raising of millions by people walking in their garden to the clap for carers, and plans for people who can't go out their own home. So I think there's a greater appreciation for the soft stuff in life, and I think that's critical, because soft skills are really, really important in business. The people who can relate and build empathy. And that's what our travel counsellors do. I think there will be more of an acceptance of smarter working, and so people being empowered. It's not possible in every industry, but people empowered to be able to work from a a place that they choose at a time that they choose it. And ordinarily, we'd have been doing this face to face, and I would have preferred that, because we'd have had a hug and a chat, and we can see each other's body language, whether it's more effective on this. But I think people will be more accepting of smarter working and flexible working. I think that is good. I don't think anyone really celebrates the commute into, in our case, Manchester. I mean, it's nonsense. We all try and get in there for 9 o'clock and leave at whatever time. So I think flexible working is good for people's soul and happiness, and it's better for the environment. So I think that will be a more permanent feature. And I think people will be more appreciative of brands and businesses that they know that they can trust. And I know we'll all individually have heard from people in this that we may not have heard from for a while, as friends reach out and say, "Hi, are you okay?" And I think that is the same of businesses. So those businesses that stay true to their values and try to do their best. Now, listen, you won't always get it right, and we haven't got everything right at all, but have tried to do their best. And I think that will live long in people's memories, both of the people that you employ and also the customers that you need coming out of this.
Wow. And I'm going to bring Dale in a couple of minutes to do some Q&A with questions from the audience as well. But, just to kind of round up that conversation, this has been, this is one of those periods in time which you can imagine business school students are going to go back and write their dissertations on for years and years and years. But, for you, what have been your key learnings about leadership in a crisis? Because, again, every company's done things really well and also made mistakes. But, the testament to the fact of how you've performed was, money-saving expert who are quite, as much as Martin's very friendly, they're quite harsh critics of businesses. And, you top their rankings on how you've handled customers through all of this. And ultimately, especially for a B2C business, that's the real measure of how you deal with a crisis well. And that comes from leadership through the business. So what have been those kind of key things that you've learned in terms of how to lead through a crisis that perhaps all of us can apply, should this happen again?
I think the successes that we've had, and we've had lots of knocks along the way, have been down to the people that we've got and the hard work that's been put in over the course of the past 25 years. I didn't create the business model, and the business model is hugely powerful. But you don't earn trust through one conversation. You earn it over multiple interactions over a period of time. And over a period of years, our travel counsellors have made sacrifices worrying about their customers, doing the right thing by their customer. And because they've already built that trust, then when it comes to an occasion like this, they've got the relationship with the customer, so they can advise the customer, and the customer will follow them through it. So my advice to anyone who thinks about how do I prepare for a crisis is, well, if a crisis is going to happen in 15 years' time, then prepare for it now by building trust, and building trust with your people, and building trust with your customers. Other than that, I've learned that everyone's a leader. Everyone's capable of leading in their own way, and your job as a leader or a leader in title is to try and encourage that and facilitate that. I've learned about the power of communication and just trying to be honest about it. And I've learned about resilience. So one of the things that we have been doing is something similar to this. So every week I have a chat with someone from outside the travel industry we use Skype to bring an external perspective into the business. And I've spoken to a number of different people, but a constant theme on that has been about attitude and mindset. And I think it's an absolute privilege if you can share with people what they can put in place in terms of their own mental strength, resilience, to help them get through this and get through the other tough times that will cut across their lives. And you can find that source of inspiration from lots of different sources, including people who are already within the business. And we try and ultimately the benefit of being part of our community is not in what I say. I mean, I'm just the support act. Travel counsellors will get more from hearing from other travel counsellors. I'm just another person in a suit at the end of the day. Well, it's true. So provide a platform for people to be confident in sharing their voice, sharing their experiences, because people will take a lot from that peer-to-peer learning, as you talked about, and you can do that within your community just as you can outside of the community. But giving people the tools and techniques to give them the resilience to get through it. And if you can get through this, you can get through anything. And there will be other challenges in business, but there will be other challenges. Hopefully not like this, but there will be other things that will happen. So take the learnings from this in terms of your mental resilience and the support network that you've got and that you need to get through it. And also be that support to others. There's another lovely saying, isn't there, that the more you give, the more you get. And I think this has reminded us of that as well. And that's part of leadership too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's reminded me a few years ago, we were doing a piece of work with the chief executive of an airline. And, the subject came up of, as macabre topics often do in conversation of, so what happens if something happens to an aircraft? And he said, well, actually, we do drills for that every 2 weeks. No airline ever wants a plane to crash, and plenty of airlines go through their entire company history without ever having an incident. But he said to me that he wants it to be almost automatic, built in to how people lead in that organization if it ever happens. So every 2 weeks across the business, they do emergency drills of what would be the PR response. How are we going to tackle this? What would we say? How, and I think those kind of drills might become a more regular part of business life, of what happens if and what do we do when.
I think it's a really good example. And, one of the best books I've read recently was Matthew Syed's book, Black Box Thinking. And
brilliant book.
He celebrates the power of the aviation industry to learn from its mistakes, and it compares it to others that are not so good. So that goes back to culture. Having the culture within your business that people are empowered to be able to say, this isn't right, we can do this better. And if we don't act, something terrible is going to go wrong. And that comes down to culture, I think. So I'm with you on that. But I'm sure many people who are watching this who get that. You want to be in a culture where people are empowered to say what they think, and do that to scale is a powerful thing.
Absolutely. No, Steve, that's been really wonderful. And at that point, I'd love to bring Dale back into the conversation for questions from the audience. And I know they've received some questions in advance as well. So thank you, Steve. And over to you, Dale.
Excellent. Thank you, Vikas. Steve, just, we'll echo that. A really insightful session and, absolutely great to listen to. But yeah, we have had a few questions. So first one, Steve, is if you had the ear of the government, what would you ask them to do, if anything, differently at this moment in time?
Well, I think there's a travel perspective and a sort of broader perspective. So taking a non-travel perspective, I think you've got to commend them for what they have done in terms of economic support so far. I mean, I think they have been decisive on that, but it's left a few gaps for entrepreneurs, I think, and for small business owners. So I think there's more that they could do to support business owners get through this. But I think the biggest thing that they can now do is to any further specific sector support, because there are certain sectors that are going to be hit hardest. So that would be great. And I think anything that they can do, it's firstly to do that and mitigate any job losses, because the damn thing about this, apart from the loss of life, is the loss of jobs that it's going to cause. And the damage to that, to business and people, is horrible. So what can they do else to mitigate that? By sector support. And then secondly, in the face of job losses, what can they do to support people to retrain, re-educate, reskill, so that people have got the skills that are needed for those businesses that are going to thrive and prosper going forward. So I would do those two things. And then within travel, it's a topical subject, but at the moment we have got it starts next week, a quarantine. So if you return to the UK or visit the UK, you're in quarantine for 14 days. On the basis of that is a way of protecting people's health and safety. And of course, that is the primary concern of everyone. But I think there is a strong opinion that you could achieve the health and safety benefits not by quarantining, which can't be enforced. And in some countries, they're enforcing it. So in Australia, once you arrive, you get taken to a hotel, you stay in that hotel at the government's expense, you don't leave for 14 days, whereas here, we're not doing that. But by opening up air bridges to countries where they've got a high degree of COVID assurance and safety, that hopefully will, with other measures in the airport, provide assurances on health, on safety and wellness, but also have the economic benefit that everyone needs from having free and open borders to travel. That is going to help business, and ultimately, I think we all know from this there is a physical challenge and a loss of life from this, but there is a huge economic challenge and a huge mental health challenge, part of which will be driven by unemployment and things like that are not going to help our economy. So try and get that balance right, I think, is something I would encourage them to do.
Excellent. Okay, next question is around how can I, as a small business owner, keep my investors confident and still on my journey with me?
I think 2 or 3 things. Firstly, you've got to over-communicate. And I think in that communication, you've got to recognise and accept that none of us have been here before, including the investors. So this is not something that the investors can say to you over to you. This is down to you to sort out as management. You know, you need a partnerial approach to this because, you know, the investors are there for the good and the difficult times, and this is not of your doing. So we've got to be open about how can we work together to get through this. So I'd over communicate along those sort of lines. And then the second thing is you've got to plan for the worst and hope for the best in terms of how you're managing your finances and how you're managing your cash. So you prepare a set of financial scenarios that do plan for the worst and demonstrate that with support or without support, or with what support you need to make sure that you can maintain your liquidity to get through this. And then in doing that, the third thing is also show them the upside to it, so that once you do come through this, there's an investment case that is worth backing and hanging on to, so that they'll see you through it. So I'd do those 3 things. I'd over communicate, but in doing that, make sure that this has to be a reciprocal relationship here, because, you know, we didn't create this. Secondly, plan for the worst and hope for the best in terms of your financial planning, and be open about that, and that will be iterative. But in doing that, in presenting the worst case scenarios and making sure you've got the liquidity to get through it, also present the upside that shows people how exciting your business is, which it will. And let's not forget, most people listening to this 2 months ago had a fantastic business. You had a fantastic business 2 months ago, so that means you've got a fantastic business now. You've just got to get through it. Now, some people 2 months ago didn't have a great business. They didn't have a great business. They had a weaker business. Now they're the ones that potentially have a greater concern. But those people have had a good business going into this. Let's not let this, in partnership with our investors and our banks, let great businesses go to the wall because of this, because that would be a crying shame from it, because it's not our fault, this.
I think this, if I can just come in with one thing as well, you know, it does raise this point of risk management as well. So for startups and scale-ups, you know, when we're looking at those as kind of, you know, angel investors or doing, you know, Series A rounds in businesses, risk is one of those things which very few businesses put in their business plan. And it is astonishing how rare it is, you know, in a pitch or a business plan to see the consideration of risk. And I think moving forward now, more and more, you know, that risk section will be there. And also, I think, you know, investors in general will have to realize that there is give and take in terms of what you can expect in terms of scale and growth and return versus what a business does have to retain in the tank, in reserves, to get it through incidents like this. So it might actually bring investment and investment return into a healthier place as a result, which is actually good for all businesses.
Yeah, and I think going back to one of the questions you raised about what does it remind you, or what have you learned? It's a reminder of the power of having, if you can afford it, because not all businesses are of the scale they can have it, of having a balanced team in terms of your leadership. So if you're naturally, you know, more front of house, you're the relationship builder, you're the salesperson, you're the marketing person, you've got to have someone along your side who is your chief worry officer, who's worrying about risk when you're not even thinking about it, because you're only one thing away, as we've learned from this, of something potentially disastrous happening. And having someone who's managing a risk register and thinking about risk when you're not, that's an important partnership, I think.
Next question is around decisions. So when making extremely tough decisions, should I follow my head or should I follow my heart?
Wow. What a question. I think you have to have a sounding board for stuff like that. And I think you have to have a network of people that you can be able to relate to. You'll know yourself. The thing that I would say is, I probably knew this going into it, and I'm as guilty as anyone of being headstrong. You're entrepreneurial, you're driven, you're decisive. Sometimes it's really good just to take some time out to think and not rush into a decision, particularly when it has a profound impact on people. So I would take some time to think it through. I'd think through what is your heart saying. I'd think through what is your head saying. I'd take some counsel on it. And ultimately, you've got to do what you think is right. And ultimately, you do have to make a decision and do it reasonably quickly. But once you've given it that reflection, so I probably haven't answered your question. My learnings from being around the block a few times is that invariably your heart isn't wrong most times. Your gut instinct, particularly about people. But it's dangerous, particularly if you're in a position of power and responsibility, to make instinctive, headstrong decisions when you might just be better on putting a cold towel over your head and just thinking about it before you act. I don't know if you would add to that, Chris.
Next question's quite topical around mental health. So how do you ensure that your mental health stays strong through this period?
Me personally?
Yes.
I think you've got to work out what makes you tick. So for some people know their routines better than others. Some people are morning people, evening people. You've got to know your natural biorhythms are a thing. And there's a great book on that. If you want to read Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, it's just really, really, really good on the power of stuff like that. I need to exercise to feel any degree of comfort with myself. So you've got to understand what your let out is, exercise or music or TV reading. I think so. Have your let out, and then I've learned over the years. I've had the benefit of being exposed to people who help others with their mindset, and there's a number of practical things that you can do. And I'm going to sound like your great uncle from America, but your biggest friend in this is yourself. You need to be friendly to yourself, and you need to be kind to yourself. And what you say to yourself has a profound impact on how you feel about yourself. So if you speak to a lot of people who go into businesses to fix businesses, they will tend to say they end up trying to fix the CEO before they try and fix the business. So be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, try and think about the things that help you be okay. Because if you're not okay, you can't help others. And there's a number of things that you can do. So your self-talk. So what am I saying to myself? Because your mind doesn't know the difference between the real and the unreal world. So what you're saying to yourself is critical. Have your goals. Remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And it might be an aspiration about wealth. It might be an aspiration about changing the world or changing your industry. It might be an aspiration about your family. But I'd have that front of mind, picture on your laptop or on your wall, or I'd have that somewhere written down. And I'd be thinking about my short-term and medium-term goal, medium and term goals. So your self-talk, have your goals, and be making sure that you're taking lots of positive mental vitamins. So yeah. I listen to the news regularly, but not for long. I get the headlines and then I move on, because it potentially mentally soul destroying. So have positive mental vitamins in terms of what you read, who you spend your time with, what you watch, so that you're in the best place possible. And if you do all of that, and you've got some friends around you, I don't have lots of friends, I have to say, but then you'll get through it. And I think you've got to have sounding board where you can have a bad headache and let that rip with someone, whoever that is, your partner, family, business mentor. But you're not a robot, and we're all inhuman. I think the final thing is recognise none of us are perfect. We're all imperfect, and that's okay. It's okay.
I think that bit's really critical, because this is a weird situation, and it will put people under a huge amount of stress, and it's completely fine to not be okay as well. As in, I've seen a lot of people in business who refuse to acknowledge when they're having a bad day, or they refuse to say, I'm actually just really overloaded, I can't take this other thing or this other problem on. But that's what causes burnout. And right now, your business needs you. And this is a kind of message for everyone. Your business needs you to be on your A game. And sometimes that means getting help if you need it, getting counseling if you need it, talking to people when you need to. But whatever you can do to be on your best game means that your business will be stronger for it.
Absolutely. I think take some time out. If you run a business or own a business, you never stop. You're always in the business. When you go for a walk in the park, you're in the business. You don't have to be at your desk to be in your business. So going out for a run, taking the dog for a walk, whatever it is, subject to social distancing, you're spending time thinking, and you can't put value on the time of thinking, because that's what an entrepreneur does. They're constantly thinking about how I can make things better. So I think thinking time is good. You're just trying to ease up on yourself a little bit, but I'll say ease up on yourself. You'll never will, because I never have.
Nope.
You're always satisfied. You're always going to be, but there's a fine line between happily dissatisfied and unhappily dissatisfied. And then the final thing I would say is that this is abnormal. It's abnormal. So everything is aggravated. Everything, every call you have, every conversation you have is aggravated because of the crisis, what it means for people. So I've just deliberately consciously saying, just calm down. You cannot go in all gung ho, because you don't know where people are at. So you'll have more tolerance, I think, for things, and more tolerance of people, because people are operating in an aggravated environment where things are things are just more tense, and just be accepting of that.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of the questions. So, Steve, thank you so much. Some absolutely valuable insights, and I'm sure, like me, lots of people watching this will have gained a lot of knowledge and some real insight expertise from that. Vikas, do you want to just maybe chat us through what's going to be happening over the next few weeks at this time? I know you're going to be in the hot seat a few times for us.
Yeah. So the program's kind of called Tea and Talk, if you will, and the whole principle is inviting and inspiring business leaders from all sorts of sectors to talk about how they've dealt with things through this crisis. So we've got leaders from broadcast and media. So Kat Lewis from 9 Lives Media is joining us next week to talk about her industry and TV. How are they coping when you can't film things? Mark Adelstone, who's the chairman of Beaverbrooks, is also coming to join us to talk about how businesses can best support the charitable sector at this time, how this is going to, change the nature of how businesses work with their communities. And we also have Nitin Rai, who's from Elevate Capital. They're quite a large venture capital fund in the US. They typically only invest in Black, Asian, minority, and ethnic businesses in the US. And he's going to come to talk about actually what this has meant for him as an investor, but also with the added kind of context of the race issue in the US and what that means for businesses there. So it's going to be a really interesting few weeks. Same time in the diary every week on YouTube Live as well. And then the pieces will be available for people to watch back and learn from whenever they want to. But Steve, thank you for being our inaugural guest today. It's been really, really fascinating hearing from you. And I know people will learn a lot from how you've managed your business through this crisis.
Well, thank you very much. I would say finally, is the people listening, you'll get through this. You'll get through this. Great, you'll get through this. And I'm a big believer in the power of business and all the good that business does. And business will find a way to get through this, and you'll get through it. And you'll look forward to a great future with your business. I'm sure you will.
Brilliant, excellent. Steve, Vikas, thank you from everyone at NatWest. We're delighted, and we're really looking forward to the next few weeks. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in at home as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, that was really, really good. Thanks, Steve.
It's okay.